10 minutes. That's how close the world came to a full-scale war between the United States and Iran. The planes are in the air. Targets are locked. This is it. We are ready for launch. The order has been given. There's no turning back now. At the very last second, Donald Trump did something no one expected. The operation is terminated. He called it off. The jets are returning to base.
My name is Ahmed, and you're watching Macro Syntax.
On this channel, we decode geopolitics, power, and global conflict. We navigate the intricate web of international relations and uncover the forces shaping our world. This wasn't a random decision. It was a calculated U-turn. In just 48 hours, the world held its breath. Countdown clocks ticking. Emergency alerts blaring. The final moments are here. Let's break down what really stopped these missiles. Here's the data. There's a strange indicator called the Pentagon Pizza Index. What in the world is the Pentagon Pizza Index? When pizza deliveries spike at 2 a.m., something big is happening. See the heat map. In mid-January, those deliveries surged. We've compiled the data, and as you can see, the numbers speak for themselves. That usually means war planning. And look at them in the background. Generals studying maps. The latest intelligence confirms military assets have already been successfully repositioned. Our coverage shows aircraft carriers now stationed at sea. The strike plan targeted multiple Iranian sites. The operation was complex and precise. The time for talking is over. We are prepared to take action.
All right, let's get right into it. We're going to pull back the curtain on one of the most intense, high-stakes decisions in recent memory. Back in June of 2019, the United States was, and this is no exaggeration, on the very edge of war with Iran. The order was given, and then, in the blink of an eye, it was all called off. So the question is, why?
And when I say on the edge, I mean it. We're talking about just 10 minutes. 10 minutes. That is how perilously close we all came to a brand new, major conflict in the Middle East. A war that could have spun out of control in ways nobody could predict.
You know, this quote really just says it all. This wasn't some theoretical plan being debated in a conference room. This was a live operation. The planes were literally in the air. So you have to ask yourself, what on earth could possibly happen to make a president reverse a decision like that at the absolute last second? Was it just a gut feeling, or was something much, much deeper going on?
To everyone watching, it seemed like the president was ready to go. But behind the scenes, you had intelligence analysts looking at something, well, something pretty strange, an unusual clue that confirmed a major operation was just moments away.
And this is just brilliant. It's known as the Pentagon Pizza Index, and believe it or not, it is a real thing. The logic is simple. When the Pentagon is ordering a mountain of pizzas at 2 in the morning, it's a pretty safe bet they're not just having a party. It means the war room is fully staffed and something big is about to happen. And in those final hours, the delivery drivers were very, very busy.
So the pizzas have been delivered. The mission is a go. But then, the Situation Room starts getting hit with a series of frantic, last-minute updates. And we're not talking about minor glitches. We're talking about massive geopolitical red lights that started to completely unravel the entire logic of the mission.
The first shocker came from a place you'd least expect. The assumption, of course, was that Israel, Iran's biggest enemy, would be cheering this on. But the reality was the total opposite. Behind closed doors, Prime Minister Netanyahu was actually hitting the brakes, urging caution. Why? Well, Israeli intelligence was deeply worried they weren't prepared for the day after, a potential storm of thousands of missiles from Hezbollah. I mean, think about it. When your closest partner in the region is telling you to wait, the entire equation changes.
So, on top of that bombshell from Israel, a logistical nightmare started to unfold. Key Arab states, countries like Saudi Arabia and Qatar, suddenly started signaling they would not let the U.S. use their airspace for a strike. All of a sudden, the flight paths for the mission were just disappearing.
And it's so important to understand why they said no. These countries were trapped in what you might call a geopolitical pincer. On one side, sure, they wanted the U.S. to take care of the Iranian threat. But on the other, they knew their own oil fields, their own cities, would be the very first targets for Iranian revenge. So they were stuck, caught between a rock and a hard place. And as if all those regional problems weren't enough, this whole situation was being watched very, very closely by the other global superpowers. This wasn't just about Washington and Tehran anymore. The whole thing was threatening to drag in much bigger players, which raised the stakes to a whole new level.
Yeah, the situation was quickly turning into a global powder keg. You had Russia issuing these very stern diplomatic warnings. Meanwhile, there were reports that China was quietly providing cyber assistance to help Iran toughen up its defenses. And all this was happening while the main U.S. aircraft carrier for the whole operation, the USS Abraham Lincoln, was in a really difficult, tactically vulnerable position. It was a mess.
So, with the military option suddenly looking incredibly risky, incredibly complicated, President Trump had a decision to make. He canceled the strike. But, and this is the key, this wasn't about making peace. It was a pivot. It was a shift to a whole different kind of warfare, reportedly driven by a single idea: proportionality. When he was told the strikes could kill 150 people in response to an unmanned drone being shot down, he decided the price was just too high.
And that new strategy became known as maximum pressure. So instead of using bombs and missiles, the idea was to double down on an all-out campaign of crippling economic sanctions, to try and isolate Iran financially, and to basically squeeze them until they came back to the negotiating table, all without firing a shot.
And to make this real, this campaign included things like a 25% tax on certain imports, on top of tons of other sanctions targeting everything from Iran's oil exports right down to its central bank. The goal was simple: choke off the regime's money supply.
So, what was the result of all this? Calling off a strike doesn't mean the conflict just ends, not even close. What really happened is the fight just shifted into what's known as the gray zone, that murky space that isn't quite all-out war, but it's definitely not peace. And it had very, very real consequences.
And the aftermath has been severe. That low-level conflict is still simmering today. Inside Iran, the economic pressure coincided with periods of horrific internal repression, with a tragic cost for its own people. And for the rest of us, the constant tension has led to wild instability in global oil prices, a dynamic that's still shaping geopolitics as we speak.
So what's the big takeaway here? That 10-minute U-turn wasn't just a president changing his mind. It was a cold, hard lesson in how the world really works today. A world where even your closest allies can and will say no when it's in their interest, and where any little regional spark can instantly threaten to become a global fire.
Which leaves us with this final crucial question. Looking back, was this decision a masterstroke of restraint that prevented a catastrophic war? Or was it a failure of resolve that ultimately just emboldened the Iranian regime, leading to the instability we're still seeing today? The jury is still out, and that debate continues to shape one of the most volatile regions on the planet.
And that's all for today. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.